Thanks, Ashley. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this panel, which we hope will serve as a useful introduction to the plaintiff side employment bar. And thanks to NELA for hosting this. I think it's going to be a great resource. Like Ashley said, I'm Claire Coleman. I'm in my 7th year of practice, 5th year in the wage theft litigation group at Nicholas Castor, which is a law firm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. For some reason, I think it's because I say yes too often. I am the co-chair of the NELA's New Practitioner Committee. And it's a relatively new committee that NELA created really to try to integrate law students, those who are interested in the career path of plaintiff side employment law, and to provide resources like this panel to kind of give insights into what that career path looks like and the different ways to get involved. A really great set of panelists with me today, all experienced plaintiff side employment practitioners, range of different firms, different areas of practice, and gracious enough to share their time. We've got, I think it's a little over an hour and 15 minutes for the panel. We do have a set of topics to cover, but like Ashley said, please ask questions in the Q&A. We don't know what you don't know unless you ask us. So please do ask us. We want it to be more, in my experience, these are always more interesting when it's conversational. So we've got stuff we're going to cover, but ask questions and we'll make sure to monitor it and try to answer those questions. With that being said, I think it's, if we could open up with introductions, maybe Dana, if you want to start, I'm thinking just name years in practice, where you're currently practicing at, and what type of law.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dana Busgang. I'm an associate in the Civil Rights and Employment Group at Cohen Milstein, Sellers, and Toll. I've been both here and practicing for about 3 years now. My first year at Cohen Milstein, I was a law fellow, and I've been in the Civil Rights and Employment Group for the last 2 years. And I do mostly wage and hour and employment discrimination class actions.
All right, if we want to do it popcorn style, I think we've got 2 Sams on the call, but if one of you want to go next.
You go, Samantha.
Sounds good. Thank you, other Sam. I'm Sam Glena. I'm at a small firm in Richmond, Virginia. We're called Butler Kerwood. I've been practicing, 3 years, and before that I did a 1-year clerkship. And I practice, same as Dana, in both the wage and hour space and in the employment discrimination space as well. So I'll pass it to the other Sam now.
Hello, everyone. I am other Sam, or Sam 2, if you will, and I am a very new practitioner. It's been a year and 6 days since I've been practicing, and before that, I did a year-long clerkship at DC Superior Court. And what I do is primarily wage and hour, but I also do some labor work as well as False Claims Act and whistleblower work. Then popcorn to Camille.
Hi everyone, Camille Fendora Rodriguez. I am a shareholder at Burger Montague in Philadelphia. I've been practicing for 14 years, but in the employment sector, I've been practicing for 11 years. Same as everyone here, wage and hour, class and collective actions, and a little bit of discrimination work. Over to me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maher Nassar. I am with the small firm of my own, which is called the Nassar Law Group. We're based in New York City. We practice in New York, New Jersey, and a few other states. We primarily do employment discrimination. I've been practicing now for about 16 years. And I got into this space a little bit further into my career, more after doing a lot of civil litigation. Once I came upon it, I loved it, and being able to help advocate for principles of equality, equity, diversity, inclusivity. Those are all things that I really was the basis of getting into the law. So a lot of my content, I share a lot of content on social media revolving around employment law. So if you happen to be interested in this area, definitely check it out. I'm discrimination lawyer on TikTok, Nassar Law on Instagram, and I look forward to the conversation with everyone.
All right, thanks everyone. So yeah, it sounds like we've got a lot of wage and hour people today on the panelists, but also discrimination and labor and it sounds like False Claims Act stuff. So we'll get into kind of, I guess, what plaintiff side employment encompasses. But before doing that, I was hoping to get, I think when I talk with law students who are interested in this work, the question I get most often is, how did you get into this, or what's the path into plaintiff side employment law? And so I just want to open it up to whoever feels like touching on that, and we can kind of pass it around. But and I would say when people say what's the path, my experience, there is no the path. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and I think it's good to hear how people ended up doing this. If anyone wants to start, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll start with this one only because I came somewhat untraditionally into this. I went through law school with a desire to kind of fight for so-called justice. Didn't know what justice meant outside of feeling like, as somebody who's Muslim, feeling kind of like the environment wasn't really meant for me. And so I wanted to advocate and try to set up my skills to advocate for myself, gain a voice, and then eventually advocate for others that perhaps felt that way. Now, I didn't know about employment law when I was in law school. And so I came across an attorney that was doing the work, but I wasn't doing it. And I didn't know anything about it. So I actually teamed up with them because they had so much overflow, and that's how I got involved in the practice area. So it wasn't a traditional way. I didn't experience any of it within law school, didn't take any classes regarding employment law. I learned it after I have gained experience with like civil litigation. I did some trials, got my bearings on how the court system works. And I just got lucky in terms of learning about this area through other attorneys that were in this industry. I think a lot of people that are in this industry tend to gatekeep it because there's so much potential in it, and there's so much volume of possibilities for people to really come in. And let me tell you, there's not only are you able to kind of advocate for principles that you believe in and values that you stand for, but you also are able to make a good living. I think people kind of assume that if you're in this space that, you're kind of living in a nonprofit type of a salary. And in many instances, that can be the case, but there's a lot of potential here where good work can be very, very financially rewarding. So I think, in terms of pathways, meeting other attorneys, the people that are in this practice are relatively small firms, trying to see how you can get involved with them, internships, summer associate relation. A lot of people that I have had the opportunity to become interns at my firm have reached out. That's like through my firm email, hey, do you have any opportunities? I'd like to learn about this area. I want to get involved in this. I really want to do this. And I always want to know like why? Like why do you want to get into this? And if that why matches up with what our firm stands for, then I'm going to be like, hey, come on in, because there is so much of a need to help, people experiencing employment discrimination, wage and hour claims, whistleblower activity, all those things. There's so much out there. So I think, as Clara had said, there are many different pathways. It's just about you kind of finding your own, but definitely knock on doors.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in there as well. I think for me, I first, when I came out of law school, I did not come out of law school at a great financial time. It was, I went into law school in 2008 right when the recession was happening, and I graduated in 2011 when it wasn't so great for, being a newbie lawyer. So when I first started, I was a personal injury attorney, so still plaintiff side. And then I got a call, an email from my mentor, I part of NELA as well, Sharon Lopez, and said, hey, there's an opportunity at Berger Montague. It's a contract position, but it's something different. And from there, I was able to work my way up and get into the wage and hour department, which I absolutely love. It fell on my lap. It wasn't something that I was looking for. But once I got into it, it was the most amazing thing in the world. Because for me, at least for class and collective actions as well, you're not just impacting one person, you're impacting a large group of people. And depending on the industry, you might be impacting the industry as well. So it's just a matter, for at least for me, it was luck. um, the circumstances of the time, but sometimes that is what happens. It's just a matter of falling on your lap.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. So after law school, I clerked. And when I was clerking, we had a class action, an FLSA collective and class action before us. And that oddly didn't get removed. But that kind of opened my eyes to the labor and employment field. And as soon as as my clerkship was wrapping up, I was looking at different nonprofits and public interest firms, and a fellowship at Murphy Anderson, which is what I'm currently doing, that popped up. And then I wasn't sure that it was 100% what I wanted to do. I originally studied international law, big into human rights, but kind of got a little bit disillusioned with that and realized that I think I could make a bigger difference and more of an impact domestically. And so it just kind of also fell into my lap. One of my favorite things about labor and employment is it sits at the intersection of so many different social justice issues. And so not only are you, if you're helping a class, even if you're helping an individual who is trying to get their wage back, there's a lot of intersectionality with different, race, gender identity, sexuality. And so it's such a great area to get into if you want to have an impact in multiple different ways.
I'll follow up after other Sam, because I had a really similar experience. I was clerking. I saw a case that came through. It was actually a defamation case. So we do at my firm take some defamation cases as well. It kind of folds in with employment. And it was a 7-day trial. It was a really interesting trial because, you don't really get to see a lot of defamation cases that get to trial. And the attorneys on the case were just so nice to me. Every day it was please and thank you, like very respectful. And that wasn't really an experience I'd had with every attorney in the courthouse. So when my clerkship was kind of wrapping up, I reached out to them and just kind of got coffee and met with them. And I was like, hey, are you guys hiring? And they were like, well, we could, for you, sure. So I think all that to say, reach out to people that you meet. Lawyers are super friendly. They want to chat. They want to talk to you. They're interested in what they do. And it never hurts to just pick up the phone and ask, hey, are you hiring? I'm interested in what you're doing. Or even, hey, let's grab coffee. I want to learn more about what you're doing. Oh, and they hired me. That was the end of the story.
Similar to Sam, I also did a fellowship at my firm, but I did not clerk beforehand. So I went right from law school into the fellowship. And I was actually a part-time student. So when I was in law school, I was working full-time at a couple different locations. And one of the firms that I worked for was a plaintiff side employment firm, and who only hired part-time students as their law clerks, and really gave us some really incredible litigation experience. And that's kind of where I fell in love with employment law. And from there, I just kind of kept pursuing the different paths of what that looked like. So I started doing the individual work, and then I worked for a firm called Outen and Golden, which also does both individual and class action employment law. And from there, I found Cohen Milstein, who's a firm that they work with often, and their offices are like right across the street from ours, and applied to that fellowship. And I think there are a number of firms that have like these private public interest firms that do classwork and that have fellowships for law students who are coming right out of law school. A lot of times I feel like it is kind of hard to break into some of these firms if you don't have any litigation experience. Sometimes they want maybe a year or two of experience, and it's hard for, I think, people coming directly out of law school to be able to apply for an associate position, for example. So these fellowships are a really great way to get your foot in the door, A, and B, get some litigation experience under your belt. But also if there's a limited amount of fellowships too, so just doing something that gets you that litigation experience, to be able to market yourself to firms afterwards, I think is really important. And if it's something that's maybe not exactly what you want to be doing right out the gate, and have to take a job at a big law firm to pay the bills, like that's what you got to do. I actually worked at my first job in law school was at a big law firm in their pro bono program. And I saw so many associates come in for 2 to 3 years, do a ton of pro bono work, and then kind of make their exit once they kind of found what they wanted to be doing. So if you can stay on that path, if that's the path you have to take, that's what you got to do. But I think definitely finding some place where you can get some litigation experience and use that to market yourself, and whether that's a fellowship, or working at a smaller firm, local firm. I think that's a really good way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I had, I guess, somewhat of a similar experience in that I didn't go into law school thinking I was going to do plaintiff side employment law. I went in thinking I wanted to do policy related work. I had worked at the Human Rights Campaign, which was a nonprofit in DC. And it was around the same time as all the same-sex marriage rulings were coming out. And I went into law school thinking I wanted to do some type of policy work. And then my first summer after 1L, I worked at an organization that was disability rights, nonprofit, and really struggled with the long-termness of it, kind of. It's great work, but it's just there's no like concrete wins or losses. And I found I struggled with that and ended up really liking my contracts professor first year, who was actually I went to GW and he was the employment law guru at GW and knew a bunch of people in the industry, and set me up with coffee with different plaintiff side employment practitioners and kind of got into it that way. And then I think with those experiences in law school, I did a summer clerkship and just loved the energy. I think what Mahir said, I like the fact that plaintiff side employment law, you're doing really good work, that you feel you can sleep well at night, you feel like you're doing good stuff, and you can make money doing it, which I think is, going in thinking I was going to do nonprofit work, you kind of know you're not going to make a ton of money doing it. But I think the plaintiff side employment is a really nice kind of intersection where you can do really good work, make money doing it. There is this kind of distinction that's sort of been touched on of doing class work versus individual work. If you really are focused on making an impact, sometimes the class work is the way to go, because you can change industries and make change that way. But yeah, I don't think there is a path. And sometimes I think for law students, that's hard, because for defense side work or big law, there is such a path. And so I would say if you're in law school and you're feeling stressed about the uncertainty, in my experience, it'll work out. Just say yes to opportunities, get coffee with people, do things in the realm that you want to be working in, and it'll work out eventually in terms of getting a job or a fellowship. Dana, I wanted to ask and open up this to everyone else too, especially people who maybe more recently graduated. Where do you go to look for job opportunities, plaintiff side employment opportunities? Because I always felt like that was a struggle of knowing what's out there. So how did you find your fellowship? And then for other people, just what would you be your suggestions for keeping an eye out for good opportunities?
Yeah, I think I found this fellowship just through talking to people at where I was at out in Golden, and a professor of mine who was aware of Cohen-Mills-Dean, a good amount of Googling. I will say, and my school's job board, there's also an organization called the Impact Fund that has a public interest jobs board that they post once every 2 weeks or so. That's separated by geographic region. We post our fellowships and all of our openings on there. I think it's a really great resource that not a lot of people know about. So I would highly recommend checking that out. But I think also once you start to kind of talk to people who are in this kind of area and wanting to do the same work, it is a small community. And so you can talk to one person and get a list of firms, and it might be the same kind of people. Once you talk to them, they're going to point you in the same directions.
With the hiring at our firm, from time to time, I'm the co-coordinator of the Opportunity and Employee Engagement Task Force. I say that for our firm, Bergamonte, we post a lot of times on LinkedIn still. So that's another way to do it. But we also do post on college boards, law school boards, and then we do try to do some on-site interviews at certain schools. And we're participating at a lot of plaintiffs bar, student organizations, roundtables and everything like that to gain that audience and that give some insight and also recruit. So think about joining if you're in a law school that has a plaintiffs student plaintiffs bar association, join there as well.
Yeah, and I see, I think Ashley put in the comments, NELA is in the process of creating a job board, which will be an awesome resource. I know, I think it's the Plaintiffs Law Association is a relatively, it wasn't around when I was in law school. I wish it had been. But I think they've got a job board as well. And yeah, I would agree, Dana, it's also, there's a lot of word of mouth. And so like getting coffee with people and asking around for what firms they know, the reputation of those firms, all of that. But it's definitely, it takes a little research to find out what's out there. We've touched, I think, in introductions on what type of plaintiff side employment law we do. I wanted to kind of get into how did you end up doing that type of area of law, and what are kind of some of the unique, good or bad things about that type of law. And I can start, my firm, we're based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We say we're a plaintiff side employment firm. It's kind of an umbrella. We have an ERISA group that does retirement fund mismanagement lawsuits. We have individual group that does discrimination cases, so disability discrimination, gender identity discrimination, racial discrimination. We have a key TAM group that does mostly like whistleblower related cases. And then the wage and hour group, which is what I'm in, where we do almost all class and collective actions for mostly low wage workers. And I just very much happenstance ended up doing wage and hour. That's what they were hiring for. And I had done a clinic in law school and handled the wage and hour case. And so I ended up doing it. And I would say wage and hour, there's pros and cons for sure. I would say the biggest pro, when I got interviewed, the hiring partner was like, you'll never need a tissue box in a deposition. And I don't know if, I'm trying to think if I've ever had a clients still can get emotional, but it's just, there's definitely less of an emotional aspect than there is to discrimination cases. Emotionally, I know some of the associates I talk with who handle discrimination cases, there's a lot of emotional baggage related to those cases. I like the class aspect and being able to have an impact. And in some ways with wage and hour, there's kind of a recipe to how you do things. And I found that I like that. But if some of you I know said you do discrimination and wage and hour, or other things, if you want to touch on kind of what the differences are, what's unique about the different types of practice.
Yeah, I do both, so I'm happy to kind of talk about it. To Claire's point, there are no tissue boxes in wage and hour. That's very true, but there are a lot of tissue boxes on the discrimination side. I'm thinking back to yesterday. I had to pull out a tissue box. What I like, so my practice is like 50-50, so I get to do both. And then I also do a little bit of labor stuff as well. But it's a really nice balance, to Claire's point, of some of the discrimination, individual discrimination work is really heavy. You've got folks that were just fired for one reason or another, be that race discrimination, sex discrimination. You see it all, and they come in really just like so upset because they've just lost their job on top of being discriminated against. So they're really in a tough spot, and part of your job is going to be, talking to that person and seeing them as a human being across from you, and letting them know that you're going to take this issue on, and that this is going to be, you're going to carry this problem for them. I say that a lot to my clients, is like, this problem is now going to be on my shoulders. And I think that's really important on the individual discrimination side. Wage and hour less so. less of that emotional aspect. So it's kind of nice, at least in my practice, to have like the balance of both, so that you don't get too sad at the end of the day.
I think, yeah, so for like discrimination, yeah, bring out the tissue box. For wage and hour, I find it that it's a different type of emotion. You're not crying, but they are very upset for good reason because it's their livelihood. It affects them and their whole family. And it in some industries, their family's not just their immediate family, but they have, cousins and brothers and sisters and, in that industry as well. So it affects them. So it as, Sam and Clara was saying, it is a nice balance if you're doing those two types of work, but you are dealing with two types of emotions. And so it's also for yourself to trying to make sure that you get everything that you need for your client, and be not just they're a lawyer, but also someone that they vent to, because sometimes they don't have that person to vent to, or or someone who understands what they're going through. So you have to have that type of communication, be prepared for it.
I will also say that for me, yes, there's the emotional weight that comes with that. And I would say the emotional responsibility that comes with that, but it can also be like some of the most incredibly rewarding moments in this work to be able to get some sort of justice or restitution for those clients in particular. I recently had a class case that settled, and some of our plaintiffs who were basically women who were dismissed from the FBI training academy for arbitrary reasons that men were not dismissed for making the same mistakes. And some of our plaintiffs and some of our class members, like this happened like 10 years ago. And it was like such a life-changing event, and it's something they've been fighting for so long. And so to see that come to its end has been like an incredibly rewarding experience, and like really makes you want to like come back and do this every day. So I think, there is that balance of it, and like it takes a while sometimes to get to that, but it's really incredible when you do. And I will add another point for wage and hour too, is in terms of just like practical doctrinal wise, there is like a formula, right? It's a lot of math. It's okay, how many hours were these people working and how much did they get paid? And there's an answer. And I feel like in employment discrimination, it's a little bit more squiggly, and it's a little harder sometimes to make the arguments in the case that you're trying to make. So not to say that they both don't have their challenges, they're just kind of different challenges, and that's why I like getting to do both too, because you get to flex your brain in different ways.
One of the things that I really love about being a fellow, and this is a plug to do a fellowship, is that they let you try a little bit of everything. So at our office, we have people who specialize in certain groups, but as a fellow, I get to do everything, which has been an amazing experience. No one's really talked yet about qui tam cases, so I'll kind of like talk about what that is like. So that can also be pretty emotional, especially if it's a situation of retaliation. There's some cases where medication is involved and someone's health can be involved, and so that can also be emotional. But I've also found that for some of the class actions that I've worked on, that like at least with the lead plaintiffs, I've really been able to get to know them and to see how getting paid what they were owed in the first place, how big a difference that can make in their lives. And so that is also especially gratifying, even though, it is a larger group of people and you don't get to know all of them as well. But I've had the fortune that I've been able to get to know the leads pretty well. And I've spoken at least once with every single plaintiff in the class, and it's over 100 people. And so I think that, getting to experience many different areas is a great way to figure out which area you think you might fit in the best. The one area I haven't really been able to do much in has been discrimination, and I really want to try doing some discrimination work. So that's also something I've learned from trying other areas.
I'll also add to what everybody else has said. I think it's important to look at it as employment law from this panel's perspective, that we represent people, right? This is the focus of what NELA does. We prioritize advocating for people's civil rights within their workplaces, whether it's their wages, their right to be treated fairly within their workplace, for them to call out unfairness or injustice or things that are violating the law, which comes into the whistleblower aspect. This is about protecting the individual and that individual raising concerns that affect our society as a whole, and ultimately making sure that the law protects that. And we as advocates make sure that those individuals get accountability when they are being targeted, because that's really what it comes down to. And, obviously after the pandemic, we saw a lot of issues dealing with worker safety. One of the things that kind of falls into that whistleblower category where people are opposing or raising concerns about workplace safety issues. We saw it with Amazon. We saw it with frontline workers. So these are real world issues that when these situations happen, when the world changes, when people's jobs and their livelihoods get impacted, and when that phone starts to ring, they're looking and seeing, like, will that lawyer listen to me? Will they understand me? Will they hear what I'm going through, and will they be able to advocate for me? And now, obviously, there's going to be times when, I heard a lot about the emotional weight of how much an individual kind of experiences with these things. This is life, right? People have emotions, and people are going to experience, to some extent, the mental health aspect of going through very challenging and difficult circumstances, both stressful things within the workplace and how it impacts their relationships. And a lot of things can fall apart. So as an attorney, obviously I'm a big advocate for mental health treatment. And I think it's really good to distinguish that our role as attorneys is to advocate under the law. It's to provide them a safe space where we can, demonstrate our empathy and support them through these difficult, challenging times, but making sure that they understand that we are lawyers. We are professionals, and we're going to advocate under the law and present their particular situations to get them accountability. But we're also going to direct them to make sure that they have mental health providers and medical professionals that are going to support them with their health issues, because you want them to be taking care of themselves. This is about, growth, progression. This is about those type of ideals where you're trying to get somebody who has been harmed to come out of that harm and move towards a better future, not to put them in a position where they're not going to be set up for better things. So I think that's one of the things that I take away from our respective areas of practice within this whole area of employment law. But I definitely think the number one skill that I have seen benefit most of all of us is the act of actively listening. If we can actively listen to our clients, it creates trust, it creates compassion. And I think this is what this area of law truly is, how it's defined, in my opinion, on being one of the cutting edges of civil rights. So I think it's definitely something to consider if you're interested in this area, to try to hone your skills in active listening.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. I think coming out of law school, one of the things I underestimated was how important people skills are, and how much of the job is dealing with people, managing people, and your clients. Like Mahir said, we're representing people, we're representing workers. And so you're advocating for them, and you need your legal skills to do that, but you also need your people skills. We had a question, and I'll open it up because I haven't really dealt with this too much, but it's Grace Wiggins asked, can we talk about language access issues when working with clients? Has anyone dealt with that, and what's your solution, or what have you done?
Is that in reference to people that speak different languages than yourself? Is that what it's?
That's
Okay.
That's my assumption. Grace, let us know if it's wrong. Yeah, it says yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely, our firm has people that speak a number of languages. Now, we sometimes at some points, I think that it's a great question because we're trying to address a lot of different communities. And especially when you're dealing with wage and hour situations, you have different communities that are from marginalized backgrounds that are essentially being taken advantage of in terms of pay rate, overtime, things of that nature. And as well as circumstances where there are people that simply do not speak English and are working within the workforce and are being mistreated, perhaps being harassed. A lot of sexual harassment happens to people that don't speak English. and they don't know what their rights are and how they can oppose it. So yeah, definitely getting translators involved. That's something that has been, we've been actively involved in doing that from different languages. And also having a team that is diversified, that will be able to address the community needs of wherever you are. Because I think that the more community driven, the more localized you become, the more that you're going to see how much of an impact you have on the day to day with people that are around you. And I think that that's extremely rewarding, and it's also something that really builds your own character. So those are the different angles that you can kind of kind of utilize as a means of addressing people that speak different languages.
I'm also thinking about it like when I've had depositions where the client primarily speaks Spanish and I speak Spanish, but obviously you want the translator there as well. It's very important, at least when I think about it in the Spanish, this has happened to me plenty of times because my background is Puerto Rican and Cuban, and certain words, when I say it, has a different meaning than someone from Central America or South America. And so for me, ahorita means later. For others, it means now. Big difference in a deposition. So you have to make sure when you can, at least in those instances, is that the translator is from that country or is familiar with that country's dialect and their manner of speaking, because it can change the deposition in many ways. And in a lot of cases, I've had to say, nope, that's not what that person meant. Can you please rephrase it, or can we have the client say it, rephrase it as well to clarify, because that's not what that client meant. And so, in other languages, I'm assuming the same would happen. And so you have to be cognizant that there might be differences in representing when representing your client in a deposition or testimonial setting as well.
One thing we have dealt with, and I think for us, it's been in class cases, just a knowledge of who your client base is and whether English is the primary language for the majority of those clients, or what the language is if not, because you're sending out a notice and it's a legal notice that has impacts on their rights. And so making sure that's in their native language, or making it easy to request that it be in a different language. And I would agree that, I think the Plaintiffs at Employment Bar has made a lot of progress in becoming more diverse, but the more diverse your firm is, and having team members who speak different languages just helps clients, you can advocate for them so much better. Another question we just got from Michaela Smith was that they're interested in advocating on behalf of labor unions, and I'm wondering if anyone has experience doing so. I do not, but I see some other people shaking their heads if you want to talk about it.
Yeah. I'm having trouble with muting. I'm muting. Yes, I advocate on behalf of labor unions. So I do like a discrete part of it. Labor unions do a lot of different things. One aspect, when they need lawyers, other than like on the CBA side, when they're drafting their collective bargaining agreements, that's a different lawyer. But I come in when they have grievances. So like when somebody, like I represent a big union, and they have workers that work at all different factories in the area. So if somebody has been fired, I'll come in for that grievance, and the grievances are kind of similar. It's an arbitration. It's similar to an employment arbitration, a little bit different. I would say that they're less involved than a full-blown like legal complaint and going to court. But the process is quite similar. And they're kind of like an institutional client. So as opposed to our other plaintiffs that come in and they've got a one-off issue, like I'm constantly working with this same union. And I work with the union representative, and then there are individual employees that have suffered the adverse event. In my case, most of the time it's a termination. And I really like that work. It breaks up kind of the other work that I do. It's nice always dealing with the same person, and she's kind of my point person. Hey, I need this information. Can you get me this? And the way that labor unions are organized, they've got the shop stewards. So those kind of are like key people that you can always talk to, get the facts of the case from them in addition to the employee themselves. But I would say it's really important to remember when you're representing unions that you represent the union. You don't represent the employee. And sometimes those interests don't necessarily align and they might want different things. So that's just like a really important thing, I think, to keep in mind in representing unions.
Yeah, that's I think a really good point, Sam. I've also done some union work, and we've even done a lot of duty of fair representation cases. So we're actually defending the union against a bargaining unit member who is alleging that the union somehow did not represent them adequately. And so that's a really good thing to keep in mind. I've also done, I've only done one of these, but it was really exciting, a petition for a group of workers to form a union, which is one of the most amazing things I've ever been a part of. It is so inspiring to see. I also love working with unions because all of the people are very proactive and so dedicated and just sharp people to work with. And it's really inspiring to see how they've organized each other and themselves. And so I really love all the union work that I've done. I've also done grievances, which are also really, really gratifying. When you can get someone their job back, that makes a huge difference in their life. And it also sets a precedent for everyone else who's in the bargaining unit. And then we've also done a bit of work with, I just lost my train of thought. Give me just a moment. Also with contract interpretation too. So we've done some class actions where you're seeking to do arbitration at a national level to interpret a national agreement. And that is also really, really fascinating. So there's so much you can do within labor. It's endless possibilities.
Touching on arbitration, which obviously in the union context is very different from arbitration in my experience in the employment context. And I think it's worth talking about. I feel like when I was in law school, I assumed arbitration was like this thing that I would never do and it was like a small part of practice. And in reality, I found that it's a huge part of practice, especially if you're doing class actions where we're dealing with more and more workers who are being forced to sign arbitration agreements upon hire. The Supreme Court has every case when I go in, I'm like, there's no way this arbitration agreement is going to be upheld. And then I read it and I'm like, okay, well, it's very, very hard to get out of an arbitration agreement. And so if the panelists, if anyone has had experience with arbitration, if you're willing to kind of share what that process is like. I know some firms, including mine, have done what are called mass arbitrations, where you file hundreds at a time. And kind of what's the difference practically in terms of being in court versus being in arbitration, if you've dealt with it?
Talk a little bit about it. So actually, it's funny enough, we're going through that right now with the case. We knew that there was an arbitration, but we wanted to test it, see what defendants would do. So we filed it in court. They filed the motion to compel arbs, looked it over. We're like, all right, looks like we're going to be filing this in arbitration. So we dismissed it. And it's mass arbitration. So but because they didn't want to agree to class-wide arbitration, which is what we usually like to propose, makes it easier for everybody. And the difference is that with mass arbitrations or individual arbitrations, you're dealing with potentially multiple arbitrators having different rules, different schedules. Maybe they might want to consolidate and do a bellwether of some sorts. There's a variety of different ways that it can go, and that's the beauty and the beast of arbitration, because it is different than being in federal court, where you have at least the basic civil rules of civil procedure, the basic rules of the federal rules of evidence in front of you. Because in arbitration, there are workarounds. You might get a retired judge, which I always find fascinating because they do like to go by the basic rules of civil procedure and evidence, which is great for me. But sometimes you just get, most of the times you get lawyers, just basic lawyers, your own colleagues, as the arbitrators. And it can run the gamut of depending on where the arbitration is going to be. If you're doing it in person, you're doing remotely. A lot more have been remotely. And it's just a big project when it comes to management. I feel like when it comes to mass arbitrations, especially, you're relying on your paralegal and your legal assistant heavily, in making sure that we all have the documents for each and every single person in place where they needed to be, contact information, the status, deadlines, everything. So, whereas when you're in a federal court dealing with class or collective actions, it's simpler, it's more streamlined. It's not that streamlined in mass arbitrations. Again, you potentially dealing with, could be up to 20 different arbitrators that have like 5 or 6 cases each. So it could be fun, and it's very expensive. The best part about arbitration when it comes to employment is that it's expensive for the employer. And so that's why in one of our cases, we proposed class-wide arbitration as a way to be efficient, but also like, hey, it's less expensive for you. But if you don't want to take it, that's up to you. Here we go. Run up the costs. So that's my experience with arbitration.
Yeah, I've never had an employer actually agree to a class arbitration, which sometimes it does come back to bite them because they have to pay the arbitrator, which does add up really quickly. And some firms file like thousands of arbitrations just to try to basically the cost is so high to litigate them for the employer. I will say as a new lawyer, like if you're just out of law school, arbitrations are a good way to get experience. Because typically if a firm has them, they're going to have a lot of them, and you can get, actual somewhat trial experience through them at the hearings. But in general, it's becoming I think, an access to justice issue where workers are no longer able to actually get into the court system. And you've got private arbitrators who are often previous defense lawyers who have an incentive, in my opinion, to roll for the employer because the employer is the one paying them and they're going to be a repeat client. And so in some ways it's faster than trial, but overall I would say it's not a good thing. And it probably will be something you're going to deal with. So if your law school has like an arbitration, I think a lot of law schools are starting to have arbitration courses. It might be worth taking, although all the rules are kind of made up. But
Sorry,
yeah.
on that note, I just wanted to flag that my firm is currently gearing up for a very large mass arbitration against Amazon and are looking to hire close to 100 attorneys to arbitrate them. So we have a posting up on our website if anybody is interested in getting started with those arbitrations.
Yeah, that'd be a really good experience. Because yeah, you get substantive experience quickly. I had a couple questions are populating. Does anyone have experience working with the unregulated labor market, such as day laborers or farm workers?
Yeah, I've got some experience. We did last year, we had a few farm worker class and collective actions. We had a few thousand farm workers. So the difficult part about farm worker cases is that the Fair Labor Standards Act actually exempts out farm workers from overtime wages. So fun fact, the hardest working people in America don't get overtime, or they're not entitled to it. So, you really can't use the FLSA. So we had 1 year in Virginia where I practiced where we could use a Virginia state law, and that's what we were able to utilize in order to get folks the money that we knew that they deserved. It's definitely really challenging. And I would say we partnered with a legal aid organization, which was really, really helpful because you've got to do a lot of outreach. Folks might be going back to their home country. Some people are only temporarily here on a visa. So it's definitely really challenging, especially when you've got thousands of people and you need to figure out, like, how do I get money to these people who might not have addresses the same way that we have addresses? They might not interface in the same sort of banking system. So I think that was really challenging, but also really, really rewarding. And then a lot of our work is with low-income populations and populations that might not be documented here in the United States. But that doesn't mean that they're any less entitled to the protections of our laws here. So we do a lot of work sort of with folks in the building trades, in particular drywall workers. And so it's really great. I really enjoy those class and collective actions, and making sure that we're able to get those folks the overtime that they deserve. Some cases it's even minimum wage, and other cases we've got a big new misclassification statute in Virginia. So folks get misclassified as 1099 workers when they should really be classified as employees. So we'll bring those causes of action as well. And I really enjoy those work, but I think it's really helpful to partner with like local nonprofits or legal aid groups that can really assist you, because you're just working with like a different population than you're used to. And sometimes it could be like a really large population that might not even live in your area permanently, but only temporarily. So, but it's really rewarding work.
Thanks, Sam. Two questions that are pending, both kind of relate to the same thing, which is specific courses or classes that would be helpful for students who are interested in employment law. I can kick it off with, in my experience, clinic was the most practical, useful experience I had in law school. And I did GW had it was like public justice advocacy, but it was basically an employment law clinic. So really good experience. In interviews, like it gave you a concrete case to talk about. You got a sense of how the litigation actually plays out. The other classes, I would say, like I took employment law, and I think it's helpful to have it, but in general, you're gonna learn stuff as you go. So I think the more practical skills you can get in law school, like trial ad, clinic, in my opinion, are the most helpful. But opening it up if there's classes you all think are good to take.
Yeah, so like I mentioned in law school, I didn't even know anything about employment law. So I came in from the perspective, and my law school, Hofstra in Long Island, has a very like prominent employment law like thing. Like the library is named after an employment law firm. So it was there. I just simply did not know about it, and I actually kind of didn't think it was anything worth looking into at that point, and I didn't know. That's just what it was. So I guess I don't come from the background where I went through a process of educating myself on the textbooks that involve employment law, the history, the civil rights stuff, all the stuff that I think is really good for context. But I do think that now that I'm more in it, and I have been in it for a while, I think the most valuable forms of things are going to be the skills involved with trial techniques, procedural things that are so more like litigation things. The more that you're able to equip yourself with ways to do legal research, how to conduct trials, how you can be a strong advocate. I think mediation, alternative dispute resolution type of classes are very helpful. I had a mediation class. I thought it was going to be an easy class because I was like, what's the harm with this? And it turned out to be a very useful skill to have in how to conduct successful mediations. They can save a lot of time and make you a lot of money in a very short amount of time. So it's about how you can use and build up your skills in a way that provides you the most to your client. And I think those soft skills of building up, your skills of negotiations, how to identify issues, and how to write, persuasively and how to advocate effectively within a court process. By building up those skills, I think you're going to set yourself up well. But I do think that, like what Clara said, was that you can try and kind of expose yourself to a variety of practice areas. I think that it's healthy to expand yourself. I think for me, oddly enough, I really like tax law. I took a course on it. Probably not, I did not want to like do anything in taxes outside of not pay them, and don't, please, it's recorded, but let's not use that. You can edit that portion out, Pedro, and actually nobody likes to pay taxes. If anybody does, don't reach out to me. But I will say this is that learning about how our system works and how the legal system works is going to be helpful in how you have to navigate it. So definitely expose yourself to a variety of things so that way you can kind of use those skills along with the employment skills as well.
I will
Yes.
definitely echo any practical experience that you can get, whether it's clinic or in your internships or externships. And I know that there's like pretrial advocacy classes that are taught that kind of walk you through discovery a little bit, and some of that's the nitty-gritty that you'll be doing a lot of once you get out of law school immediately, that you don't really get much exposure to. But I'll also just put in my usual plug when I talk to law students, is that like legal writing is going to be your most important class, no matter what you end up doing. No matter if you're litigating, if you're in policy, if you're doing regulatory work, like you will have to be able to effectively communicate through writing, whether it's in briefs or emails to your clients or to your colleagues or to the court. So like I think sometimes legal writing kind of gets pushed to the side and people are like, oh, like it's just writing, but it's really important. And I still, on like a pretty much daily basis when I'm writing, think about things that my professor, my legal writing professor kind of imparted on me. So always going to plug for legal writing.
I think Fed Courts is a really good class if your law school has it. We end up suing the state and localities a good bit. So knowing all about those immunities is really important because it's kind of tricky. And my law school also had a class on impact litigation, and that was really great. So if your law school has something like that, I'd recommend taking it.
And I would say outside of kind of the clinics, or it's not a course, but if you can do an externship, or like any, try to get as much practical experience. And I think to Sam's earlier point, I think it's a good way also to get exposures to the different types of practice areas that exist. If you find a firm you really like, don't just stay there. Like try other firms and see what the dynamic is like. Every firm's different. The sizes of firms are different. Try out a firm that does class work, try out individual work. I think externships or like summer clerkships are the best way to figure out what you want to do. And if your school can give you credit for it, then do it. We've got about 15 minutes left. I wanted to, we got some questions I saw, and I think Ashley maybe answered them about NELA membership for law students and what that looks like. In general, I wanted to kind of open it up to talk about, for the panelists, how did you become involved in NELA, and what role does it play or has it played kind of in your career as a resource?
I can start off with that. So upon becoming part of the Wage and Hour group at Burger Montague, it was actually required for you to be joining NELA National, and also NELA, local. So for me, it was the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, NELA that we're part of. And we still do that. And we have Wage and Hour attorneys across the country who are part of NELA National, and then they're local NELA. I will say that it was great recently, because one of our cases that we just filed, our local counsel came through NELA. We didn't know who to tap into for one particular area, one particular district court, and we put a feeler out, and lucky that we met with some great people, and it's going well so far. So I think that's how it's affecting me, is that we meet people, whether it's through these panels, through the conventions, which are awesome, and the spring seminars. For me, the Wage and Hour seminars Always if you can participate, that'd be great. But as you meet people, you learn new things, learn new techniques. Some of the stuff that I'm using today, I learned from NELA convention. And the same thing, last year I had both of our associates attend the NELA convention as well. It's a great resource when it comes to networking and education. So that's how it's helped me. And that's how I got into NELA.
So I actually happened to be, I got elected this summer to the executive board. So I am very grateful to the membership for allowing me to be a part of it. I think I might be amongst a very unique, diverse person in that space. And I think I'm very vocal. I'm very, I advocate a lot for a lot of issues that I strongly believe in. I've spoken up a lot about Palestinian rights. I've spoken out and advocated for things. And in light of all that, especially with so much suppression that exists, the membership elected me. And so I'm really grateful. I think it's a great place for people to be themselves. I think one of the one aspect that I found so much beauty in is that when you bring people together that are fighting for equality and equity, you'll see so many different facets of it, and you'll see um, so many different angles and perspectives that are going to create more for you in your life. And once you get to hear from people and hear about their experiences, and it really kind of shapes who you are as an individual, that will shape you in terms of how you're going to represent your clients in the future. Getting involved with NELA is phenomenal. Going to their events are really, really well managed. They are so well done. The galas, the different CLEs. I mean, the annual convention is an event, and it's an awesome event. The hotels are great, the food is great, the drinks are great, everything is great. You'll have a great time. And I think that's the whole thing about it, right? You come to learn, engage, network, but also enjoy yourself, right? You're not going to find dry people there. People have personalities that are like really something else. And I think it makes it it's a space where I think there's a lot of unique talents, and it'll also give you an opportunity to bring out your best. So definitely get involved as much as you can, be a member, try to get engaged with different aspects and committees. I think it's a growing organization, and the time is now to get involved in it, because the more that it continues to grow, the more of an impact it's going to have, and it's going to become more and more exclusive. So right now is the time.
Actually so happy right now.
I know I had to hop on to smile. I thank you all so much for the shout out about our CLEs, and I also wanted to raise that we also do a lot of policy work with NELA as well. So for those of you who might not be ready yet to get involved and go to a CLE, or might not have the time to go to a CLE in person, we also have our amicus work that we do. We try and get us involved in either signing on or drafting as many amicus briefs as we can across the country on important issues, collaborating with our state and local affiliates in order to give them the support of national on important issues that they're doing. And then, of course, also trying to comment on our legislative and public policy work, we've been doing a lot of federal sector comments with our really incredible federal sector experts who know the nitty gritty of, every aspect of the FLRA and all of these things that seemed pretty routine until 9 months ago. So I just had to give a shout out to not only our members, all of whom are here volunteering their time today and who are excited about the work that they do and excited about NELA, but our members who volunteer to write amicus briefs and speak at conventions. And we always love to get law students involved in our in-person events as well. So, but yes, also a huge thank you to all of you for that. And I'll hand it back to you guys.
Yeah, I would say in terms of law student involvement, I know we've done a panel similar to this one. It's in person the past few years at the annual convention. The annual convention's a different place every year. I think this year it's in New Orleans. It's a great, the panels are amazing. And I would say, and I think it's been touched on a little bit, it's just a very energizing place to be. The work we do is hard. it's right now in general, you know, can be a depressing world. And I think being around like-minded people who are committed to the work, you leave feeling very energized. And the law students I've interacted with, it's a great place to network. I know there's law students who come, you know, one guy who came last year and then ended up networking and got a job with, you know, a firm that's in his city. And so it is, everyone kind of knows everyone, and it is a close-knit community, and coming to NELA events, I think, if you're really interested in plaintiff side employment law, is a good decision. And resource-wise, it's just, there's the NELA Exchange if you join NELA, where people post questions about cases. There's a lot of people willing to lend their expertise to questions you have once you're in practice. And so it's been a great resource. And I think, yeah, I think if you end up at a firm that's in NELA, there probably will be a requirement to join, and it's because it is such a great resource. And if there's not, then you should join anyway and spread the word that it's a great resource.
One thing that I would add is that if you don't love interacting with very large groups of people, there are lots of great ways in NELA where you can still get involved and kind of get your foot in the door and then meet people individually. NELA has a really awesome book club that I've been going to, and that's a great low pressure environment where you're just getting together to talk about. They pick the best books, by the way. They're absolutely amazing, life-changing kind of books. And so that could be a good way to kind of, you know, slip your foot in the door, low pressure, you're not doing legal work, and just to really get to know people one-on-one. And from there, they can introduce you to other people, because everyone that I've met with NELA has been unbelievably friendly and just really willing to introduce you to others and help you. Everyone is really dedicated to the same mission at the end of the day. And so I think that, you know, if they can help you to help advance the mission, they will.
And I think somebody mentioned like the affiliate groups. So like NELA has like almost like sub chapters in your states or regions. And those are folks that like you practice near. So it's really cool to kind of get involved kind of on that level as well. So we've got like, I'm in Virginia, so we've got the VILA group, and then there's also MOWILA for like Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland. So those are really great groups to kind of get involved in. And also really helpful, I think Ashley had mentioned amicus. Shout out to NELA because they filed an amicus brief in my case today. So NELA is always helping, and so are the affiliate groups. And it's really awesome to be able to reach out and kind of get ideas from different people kind of in this plaintiff's bar.
We're running up on time. I didn't know if I don't see any questions pending. I would say, I think, Ashley, is there going to be a slide or a email sent out with the panelists' information if people have questions they want to ask later on or reach out to us?
Yeah, we have a slide. We'll put it up right at the end, and then we will also send it to everyone who is on the registration list as well. And yeah, I can confirm, having worked with NELA, kind of switching out of lawyering and into lawyer adjacent, which if you have any questions about that, feel free to email me. But this group of human beings, the work that they do, their support for people coming up in this world is very different than a lot of other hyper competitive, very acrimonious areas of the law. And I think Sam mentioned that a little bit about these lawyers being the people who were kind to her at, you know, in the courthouse as a clerk. You know, these are people fighting for working people, and they are funny and incredibly intelligent, and they want to help you succeed. So they are a group of people who really wants to help others succeed and really help you as you move your career forward. So we're so grateful to all of you, to Dana, Clara, both Sams, Sam and other Sam, whichever one you are, Camille and Maher. You know, Clara, Camille is one of our NELA Spotlight winners as a member for the work that she has done, especially with DEI at her firm. You know, Sam, Galina, Sam, Dana, Clara have all been speakers at our events. Maher is new to the board, and we just could not ask for better representation of the good work of the plaintiff's bar. So thank you all so much. We'll be sending this information around, and we will be happy to share a recording with any of your law schools who want anything. There are any last words from the panelists? We have 2 minutes, but other than that, and thank all of you for taking the time out to come and learn more about the Plaintiffs Bar.
Yeah, thanks for attending, and don't hesitate to reach out. I think all of us would be willing to do a Zoom coffee, or if you're local, sit down and talk about what we do, because we do like it.
All right.
Right.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great fall semester. And come join us at NELA. We'd love to see you.
And thank you, Ashley and Pedro, for putting this all together. This wouldn't be possible without either one of you putting this for everyone out there. So thank you, and all for the panelists as well.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Have a great afternoon.
Bye all. Thank you.